Genetic potential, the defining source of an athlete's talent and performance. What is it, and how do we go about understanding it and ultimately unleashing it? What is the reach, the scope, and the depth of our inherent athletic capacity, and how do we develop it? How far will hard work get us, and how smart does that work have to be? Where are the limits, and what are the limits made of? And what parts are played by strength of character, the power of the mind, and resilience of the spirit? Of these are the essential questions to be asked and answered on the Genetic Potential Show.
Welcome back to GPTV. I am Kelly Starrett with
TJ Murphy.
We have an amazing show for you today. We're going to take a little bit different track. We're going to expand the consciousness and the breadth of GPTV, this concept of genetic potential, and take it out of competition and put it into performance. One of the things that we believe strongly in is that as we become better athletes, better humans, and really press the boundaries of human potential, we have to go beyond our little silo. We have to look at what best practices are around the world. We have to look at how other people are solving the same sets of problems we have. And today we've got a great show.
It's about sharing our ideas, how we solve problems, and be it music or athletics, we've got something to communicate.
Oh, music. What we have for you today is we have Rogue Wave, a long-time West Coast indie pop band. New album is coming. It's not even come out yet. June 4th it releases, and they have graciously come on, decided to talk about some of the creative process, what it's like to tour, some of the issues that they have, and play some songs for us. This is mind-blowing. These guys are a very, very well-known band. Check out Rogue Wave. And then, you know, in the spirit of this show, we've decided that we really wanted to have the conversations on camera that we were having around the dinner table. Zach is a family friend. We have talked so much about what it means to be creative. How do you get into that performance state? How do you manage not sleeping and playing at a different time in a strange place with not very good food and perform?
And not only just over weeks and months, but over years and years. And that's what I think is kind of interesting. They've been performing great music for a long time, and they continue to find more inspiration and spark and to deliver great stuff.
That's right. So, you know, as we said, we measure an athlete, you know, by their capacity to get better from year to year. That Fibonacci sequence, right? And so as you come back towards that ideal and to that capacity, you know, how much better these guys are. So much better. This album, I've had a chance to listen to it. For me, it's like when Radiohead did Kid A, and people were like, whoa, what was that? That's what's going to happen with this band and Rogue Wave. Also interesting is that it's easy to forget the training age of some of our best athletes. They have been competitors their whole lives. We've talked about Daniel Coyle's book, Talent Code, on here a bunch, and really looking at skill acquisition and what are the keys to skill acquisition. Turns out it's practice. It turns out it's grinding.
Yeah, burning through the boredom of it, the tedium of constant repetition. And I think one of the things that Coyle talks about a lot is the application of skill acquisition with musicians, whether you're playing the violin, the guitar, how it's not just a matter of something you're going to learn in a couple of years, but over hundreds and thousands of hours, not hundreds of thousands of hours, but hundreds or thousands of hours over the course of, say, 10 years to build up that 10,000 hour base where you actually achieve mastery.
Yeah, and that's the base. Now what are you going to do with that mastery, right? And how do you integrate? What are the ways that you kind of consciously look at your own process? You know, like, you know, we do a lot, we believe in a lot of coaching, we do a lot of video analysis, we get immediate feedback. What's that process look like for musicians?
And what about the obstacles? What about along the way, you're going to encounter injuries, you're going to encounter those sort of frustrations that might make you want to quit, and yet you persevere and keep it going toward a higher level.
You've got a copy of a great documentary that came out. It's called Detour. Chronicles one of the band members, Pat Spurgeon, his fight with having kidney failure. He was born with a single kidney, out on the road, in kidney failure, giving himself dialysis, and still performing, still showing up, you know, feeling terrible, but putting the work in. Unbelievable. I love this documentary.
And it underscores why we should all sign up to be a donor.
That's right, absolutely. And it's interesting, Pat on the show has had 2 transplant kidneys. It's not really that different than people getting a meniscus allograft or a meniscus from a meniscus donor or an ACL from an ACL donor. We kind of take that for granted. If I'm I'm a physician, you know, I've torn my ACL and I get that meniscus or ACL graft from a cadaver, that was donated from someone who signed, yes, I'm a donor. So as it ties back in, the art is performance, performance is competition. How do we get better at this and achieve? We have a great show. Rogue Wave, hang tough. We'll see you guys in a second.
Okay, guys, you want to get a hold of us, you want to get more involved, here's how you're going to do it. Hit us on Facebook.
Send us your best picture of the worst thing you're seeing during the week.
Twitter, at GP Television.
Hashtag leopard fail. Hashtag I see more potential. And then, of course, hashtag GPTV. Hey, welcome back to GPTV. We are so pleased to have to expand out our reach into the universe. We have the famous West Coast long-term indie duo act, Rogue Wave. This is Zach Schwartz, Pat Spurgeon. We should just spend a second talking about how we know each other. Mm-hmm. You and my wife, back in when you guys were freshmen in college.
Yeah.
You ran a day camp together, sort of thing, roughing it day camp.
We did not run it.
You ran a day. Well, part of it. I mean, I think Juliet,
we participated.
Juliet said she took her job was to unhook fish all day long for kids who were fishing out of a stocked pond.
Yeah, she had the most fraudulent job, I think, at camp, because as far as I know, she didn't know anything about fishing.
Now,
well, the pond was stocked, so it was like.
Yeah. I was a
stocked.
counselor. She was a fishing instructor.
She was a fish counselor.
Yeah.
So, just as an aside, as mea culpa, Rogue Wave is in my top 10 bands on the planet. I won't tell you where it is. Sometimes you're number one. Sometimes you may be number two. So I am a fanboy, and one of the emphases of and origins of Genetic Potential TV was to talk about processes of creativity, of performance, of kind of pressing the boundaries of how we arrive when you at a state when you have to perform. That we found that solving problems, competition, performance have a lot of overlap, and we wanted to talk with you guys a little bit about creative process, where you guys are, what's happening, how you manage the road, those sort of things. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, the first thing is, you guys have a new album coming out. When?
Do you know? June 4th.
June 4th.
See if you knew. Yes, June 4th.
And it is called?
June 4th. You know
that I know. It's called Nightingale Floors.
Nightingale Floors.
The Nightingale Floors,
yeah.
Which of course is walking like a ninja over the Nightingale floor, so it doesn't squeak, and then you can kill your enemies, right?
Right.
Yeah.
If you're good.
So there's the ninja parallel in here too. You guys have been playing together for a long time, maybe about 10 years. Rogue Wave has been together.
About that, yeah.
That.
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
You could say that.
One of the things that I have grilled you on when we have dinner and hang out is what the creative process looks like a little bit for you guys. This album, you guys kind of go dormant for a while. It seems from the outside, you kind of, process, get better, and then all of a sudden you pop back up with this body of work, but that's not what the day-to-day looks like for you guys, is it? You talk about sort of your daily creative process?
Yeah, well, it's kind of always changing.
Yeah.
I think, actually in talking to you, you've told me about working with actors or athletes, and you always say how non-sexy it is, and how you realize when you demystify things, how the monotony of getting to where you need to operate at a high level, there's a lot of monotony and discipline that has to happen, and it's not sexy, and what we do is there's a lot of repetition, there's a lot of banging your head against the wall in our beat-up studio in Oakland, but I think, there is no real one way we do things because it depends on where we're at. If we're preparing for a tour, then there's a lot of the rehearsing side. If we're working on a record, then it's a lot of different stuff. It's just sitting in a room sometimes with a guitar and just banging on who knows what to come up with ideas, or just sitting in our control room. So all of those things, whether it's working on a demo or actually working on an album or getting ready for touring, all of those things we just can sit for 8-10 hours working on things. It's a lot of repetition. It's a lot of working together and listening. But it's definitely, you have to trust each other that you can actually get through the day.
And I imagine trusting the process too, because I see that, and I imagine there's times when you're just completely frustrated, like nothing's really coming, but you still grind your way through it, knowing that there's something that's going to happen.
Well, that's actually really true, and it's really funny. I remember we were having a rehearsal not too long ago, if you remember this, and we were playing this song of ours, which we've played, I don't know, 500 times. We were playing Bird on a Wire, which is an old song of ours, and we were rehearsing, and it sounded terrible. And I couldn't understand it because we played the song so many times. Like, why is this not working? We know this.
I think we were on autopilot or something.
Yeah, and I felt like no matter what we did that day, it didn't work. And I couldn't figure out. We'd go from song to song, and it's the same people in the same room, and it didn't work. And I think you have those moments sometimes. And then the next rehearsal we had, everything seemed to kind of work just fine. But it's knowing that when you have those challenges where it just doesn't seem like it's working, be able to persevere and grind through, and know that it's worked before. So believing in each other enough to know that you will get to that point where it feels like music and not just a bunch of like loud frequencies happening in a room. You know?
I have a better example, real quick. Is we were doing a cover of REM's "Sidewinder Sleeps Tonight" from Automatic for the People, and I swear we were at the studio all day. And we got to the point where we were just kind of so tired and beat down, and at one point Zach was just out in the live room, just kind of like head down with a bass guitar and just playing it really. It reminded me of something off of Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska record, and it was like that's the direction to go. And then all of a sudden at about 11 o'clock at night, after being there all day, we had the direction, but we were there for so long. I can't even remember what any of the other versions sounded like, but it came out sounding so good, and it was worth the monotony of sitting there and making it happen.
Do you guys play music every day?
In some form or another, not together every single day. Although when we're ramping up for touring, it's getting to be almost every day. And then it's kind of funny actually, when you're in tour mode and you're playing shows, you get a day off here or there, and it's really strange actually because you have I remember whenever we have a day off, I feel really relieved, and then I feel this sense of nervousness when we play the next day. I'm like, God, we've had an entire day off. I've forgotten what you have to be playing together all the time to operate on the right level, where you're not just thinking about, oh, how's the song go, but I'm just flowing, I'm just performing.
We talk a lot about with
repetition.
The athletes of, we just had Forrest Griffin on. He said, you shouldn't. He never takes a day off. He may not be fighting, but there's a day where he says he can't turn the engine off. You have to keep the engine idling a little bit, and that's why I'm wondering, to be able to turn on the creative process and write and perform, and it's so diverse to put all these kind of skills together, and yet, I know that when we talk and you're at the studio, you guys go to the studio, even though you don't play. Is the 5 days a week? Is it like a job? How do you manage that?
It is like a job, but actually, before that though, I would say that there's a real difference in my mind between being primed and ready to perform or ready to record something. That's really different than writing and coming up with the new ideas. And in fact, sometimes I try to not go to my guitar or piano every single day, because I notice when I get a little bit of space from it, I'll honestly, as many years as I've been playing guitar, if I take a few days off and then I pick it up again, it's like, what is this thing? Because if you're playing all the time, you get used to patterns, scales or chord progressions that you're familiar with. But only when I take a step back will I kind of get into that headspace where I'm not, it's kind of hard to describe, but where I'm not consciously playing, but I'm just kind of letting go and letting my mind wander, and that's how I get to a new place. But I find I only get to that when I have a little bit of a break.
Or if you pick up someone else's guitar, even if if I pick up Zach's guitar, it's different from mine. It feels different, and it's the tiniest little thing that'll bring a different thought out of you. The sound.
One interesting thing I read, Zach, and sometimes it's about shaking things up, but you talked about how being in Bloomington, Indiana, to do some recording allowed you to sort of escape kind of the noise that we deal with in today's society. I think you commented on the news cycle and all these thoughts that sort of crowd in our head. I think athletes deal with this too. Like we talked with Mark Allen last time about this very thing, about finding some sort of space between our thoughts and the words to do something different and new. And you talked how that helped you slow down. Could you comment a little bit about that?
Well, actually, whenever we work on a record, we always try to record in a different town. Every time we always go somewhere different. We did a record in Oxford, Mississippi. We've done a record near south of Portland. We spent a long time in Oxford. We lived there for like 4 months. But we always try to go somewhere different, because I feel like if you find that combination of familiarity, of knowing the songs, like we this record, we demoed for like 6 months. We were working on them and tweaking the demos. In fact, we got so attached to the demos, we used some of them in the recordings. We took pieces of them. But yeah, I find that it's the perfect combination of repetition of knowing the music and then instantly being thrust into a different environment. That's where you reconnect with the emotional side, you know? Because I think a good album is a moment in time. You know, when you feel a sense of an emotional timestamp on something, you know? And so, yeah, I think going somewhere else that and turning your phone off, or you know, getting a little bit of isolation in a different place.
Letting everyone know that you're not available for a day or whatever, it's very liberating.
Yeah. So when we were out for this album, we were out in this like farm town, Kotati, which wasn't that far in mileage from the Bay Area, but it was enough where we're in this foreign kind of farm town, and I felt like I was in another world, and I felt isolated in kind of a nice way, you know.
We isolated you.
There's a great documentary about life on the road we'll talk about in just a second, but one of the things that comes up in that documentary, you say, is that you've always known you're going to create music. This is what you do, no matter what. You've known this. We've talked about when you started playing music. Can you guys talk about how long that has been? Because we are always looking at athletes about saying, how do you create a body of work or ready state for a person, so that then those skills can evolve into something sort of kind of athletic pinnacle. But your training age, which is really this age of how long you've been practicing, right? The grittiness of practicing. For you guys, it's now getting on to be quite a few decades almost. Can you talk about, you know, that a little bit? Like how long you've been playing and what that looks like in terms of kind of skill, or when you knew you were going to be musicians?
Well, I knew I was going to go into music back when I was in high school. Because I remember one time this girlfriend I had, I went to a dinner, it was like before a big dance or something, Sadie Hawkins or something like that. And the parents went around and said, what do you want to do when you blah, blah, blah. And I just half-heartedly said I wanted to be an architect or a lawyer. I just grabbed what my uncle and my aunt did. But I had no desire to do that. Because I was playing, I met this friend of mine, and this guy who I still hang with every once in a while. He got me into listening to music first, and then got me into playing with him. He just and I just never wanted to look back. And I was a junior in high school then. I never thought of anything else. I went to college. I got a degree. I did all that stuff. I went to music school for a while and decided that wasn't the right path, and got a degree in general studies, and just by default, because I spent so many years there. But the whole time I was playing in bands. The only time I ever took time off is when I had my first transplant, my first dose of kidney failure. You know, I took time off because I had to, but that's when I learned how to play guitar. I took time off. My brothers showed me, hey, here's a Beatles book. This is how you hold your hands, and they taught what my brother taught me how to play guitar in that time. So I took that time to do that.
There's a great book out called The Talent Code, which really looks at skill, any physical skill, as a complex biological process where the neurons that fire together, you know, wire together. And it really is just, the biology is that these Schwann cells come in and myelinate these pathways. And they looks at like 10,000 hours as sort of this magic number where this skill acquisition sort of starts to happen. Mm-hmm. As you guys have progressed, how do you, I hear this repetition over and over, it's not sexy, you practice a lot, you play a lot, you perform a lot. How does that kind of new skill acquisition, what's your feedback mechanism to get to kind of critique self and to think about getting better? Do you guys have one?
Well, actually, Pat started setting up mics in our rehearsal space so we could hear our rehearsals.
When did that start?
Jeez. I think we kind of do it. I think 2006. A few years. Yeah.
That's the best way.
Did that change your process or experience of your process? 'Cause we do a lot of video and we do a lot of coaching, but some of the feedback of the creative process for you guys sort of just happens, and either was serendipity and you captured it, but now you're saying you sort of have a meta awareness of this process.
Well, you are your own like, what is it, your own worst critic or enemy or whatever it is. But if you hear it yourself, you know how it's supposed to sound. A lot of people are going to blow smoke in various areas of your body to tell you that you're great.
Well, yeah, I think it's like having any other kind of editor. It's just holding a mirror up. When you hear a recording, what it actually sounds like, you can think in your mind that it's coming off a certain way because you're emoting, but when you hear it all at once, a recording doesn't lie, and so it's actually it's important to do that. Tells me when I'm overdoing it, because you can think you're really hammering the emotional message through, but sometimes it comes back and when you hear a recording, it's like, wow, you overdid that. Yeah. And it's actually really lessening the impact because there's no subtlety, whatever,
Yeah.
So I think that kind of stuff, that helps me a lot,
Well, and that drive to deliver a great performance in recording is one thing, but when you guys are on the road, whenever I go to see a band that I know has been traveling around the country playing probably every night or a couple of nights, I think about how tired I get when I travel. And do you have a ritual, some sort of mechanism where you can kind of beat back that fatigue or the mental drain of it and
Lots
just be on?
Lots of whiskey.
Single malt?
I'm not really a single malt fan, but I will in a pinch.
So, but I think this is one of the interesting pieces that we work with the San Jose Sharks, for example, right? And they've worked with the sleep researchers at Stanford who say 1 hour change takes an entire day out of it. If you get one bad night's sleep, you're immune compromised, you're insulin insensitive, your body's wrecked. I'm guessing you guys get regularly like 10 hours of sleep on the road. Is that how that works?
Yeah, exactly.
Usually about that. But there's something really strange. I'm getting on stage or just, being an athlete, well, I'm sure it's the same thing. It's a performance. You go up there, you do your job, but you're also in front of people, and there's a charge you get, and maybe it's showing off, or maybe it's being narcissistic or something. But you get this energy that I could be dead tired. We all have been. That I can't believe I'm up right now, but then you have to go and do this thing, and it comes off great, and you have all this energy, and then you have to go and try to get rid of that energy and go to sleep or get it back in the van and drive, and it's really kind of a weird.
But you know what though, I would say this. I don't view that energy as a form of narcissism. No. I view it as, I remember when I'm on the road. It's always the same thing. You just feel, just because you're going to bed at 4 a.m, getting up at 7, you're gonna be tired. And I always find there's this lull, and it's emotionally connected to where I know the evening is going to go. Kind of, I know I get tired, I get really sleepy, especially like an hour before we play. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's narcissism. I think no matter how dead tired I've ever felt, the moment we are playing, especially if it's we're headlining, if it's our own touring, I find that once we start playing, no matter how tired I am, it's not about narcissism. It's just that when we're playing to our audience and we're in that moment, it's a reciprocal. We've talked about this before. It's a reciprocal thing where whatever they're giving to us, we're giving, and that kind of energy exchange. That's a real thing. It's a real emotional type of back and forth. So if the audience is dead, then we feel like we're swimming upstream and screaming into a pillow and there's nothing. But when it's a real kind of emotional connection there, I could have not slept for a week. It doesn't matter. The connection we have, it kind of supersedes all of that. And that's the whole reason why we get into the groove of touring anyway, is for that connection with those people, because we share something with them. And it's only happening at that moment, and then it's over, but it's just that moment you're together. And that's why people like going to see live shows for music that they like, because when it's happening, there's nothing like that. You're having this moment that will only happen that night, and that's why people love it when, all these mistakes happen. I fall on my face, or a string breaks, or whatever. It's the human element that we're sharing that transcends normal fatigue.
Do you have a process to get yourselves ready for that? Do you eat a certain thing? You get together at a certain time? You all have a cheer that sets a mind state? I saw that on Justin Bieber, that's why I mentioned the cheer.
Oh no.
I like to stick my face in a big thing of ice water before we go on, and like to have a little sip of a little drink and just connect.
Kool-Aid.
Just have a little alone time, together before, maybe sing a little something before. I think it was maybe a little more ritualized when we first started, and now we're kind of, we know how we need to be.
Mm-hmm.
We're not like all in different places before we play. We're near each other before we do, and
I
talking
tried to
about
do a
this.
warm up that Kenny Aronoff, that John Mellencamp's drummer, former drummer anyway. I took a lesson with him, and he gave me a warm up that I try to do, and even if it's just tapping, it's like this warm up that takes about 10 minutes. Just do that, gets the hands and feet, or at least the ankles limbered up and the wrists. Doesn't really work out, but it's just a nice mellow kind of thing to get ready.
You guys have been playing a long time and touring together. I hear, going to bed at 4 in the morning, getting up at 7. But now sort of you have wives and children. How does that...
He has wives.
Wives, multiple wives and multiple children. How does that, the reality of being a working musician now and family, how do you, because all the professional athletes I know in their 30s, they, you have to have a fight with your wife or manage moving your family around. One of my baseball players is living in a different place from his family. And does that influence the simplicity of being on the road as a band? How does that affect it?
I want to know how it affects baseball players, because that seems really strange, But we'll get to that. We'll talk on the side. Like, they play in another team, but they live somewhere. That's got to be such a pain.
Yeah. I wonder about that too. I got a little insight when I watched that Showtime show.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I think it's actually the good thing about, it's very difficult touring and having a family. There's just no way around it. But what it does for us with domestic touring, it forces us to take breaks. So we don't go out for like 3 months in the US. Go out for a couple weeks, recharge, go back. And I think that kind of self-imposed break really, it's good for me to be with the family, but it's also just good to do so that when you go back out again, you feel fresh, But, the way I look at it is I try not to look too far ahead with the grind of being gone, because I also remind myself, if I looked at the grind to begin with, I never would have gotten into this. So, you can only look so far ahead. You can only plan, the year. You can't plan all the years,
right?
And so I don't think there's a real answer. I think you have to have a partner that's understanding. And part of the reward of doing this is that when you're not on tour, you're home. You're home all day if you want to be, and that's a real benefit. So I have friends that live here and live with their families, but they see their kids less because their jobs are so demanding that they really only get Saturday and Sunday. When I'm home, I'm just home. So I see that as a real benefit. And I think children want to see their parents doing things that inspire them. I think children want to feel inspired. And if you just, it's about anything else, about communication. If you're present with your family, then you can get through it. It's not like we're like in the military where we're, gone for, years at a time. I feel like everybody has to do something to feed their soul and earn a living and all of that. And I think if you just try and keep it together, hopefully it'll work out.
I mentioned this documentary called Detour, which followed you guys on tour when you were, now, and the short story is that, and if I'm paraphrasing wrong, you were born with a single kidney.
Yes.
That kidney developed some problems. You got another kidney.
As a loser kidney.
Right, right. So back here, it wasn't a loser kidney. It just wasn't performing up to standards, right?
Yeah.
So
It decided to do that at one point.
You had to go on dialysis while waiting for a kidney transplant, and happened to go on the road at the same time. And this documentary called Detour, the dialysis, the D-bag,
yes.
Sort of chronicles your experience with that. I think there are a lot of people who can relate to having to perform physically and manage a condition like that. Like I have a hurt back or knee pain, or can you talk about how that impacted your ability to show up and be a professional person?
Oh, it seems like
I didn't think you thought about it.
I didn't think about it. Staying home and not doing anything would have hurt me more.
There's an image of you on the piano, bent over and obviously feeling awesome.
Yes.
Right? You can, like, you've got your head resting on the keys, and every once in a while you sort of play a little bit and just keep your head on the keys. And yet you still show up and are, cogent and organized and, and can, parallel, Zach, is that you had a couple of tweaks that made difficult chronic pain in the back and some things. Did that influence the way you thought about your music or the fear of being able to perform? How did that impact your creative process and touring and making a living as a musician?
Well, my health thing just made me fear that I wouldn't be able to go out and play anymore, which would make me not have, in my opinion, I wouldn't have anything else. Like artistically and professionally, I wouldn't know what to do with myself.
Did you make changes in your lifestyle? Obviously, if there's some diet restrictions, did that impact how you thought about this?
I had dietary restrictions, but we were on the road, and there was no way to really solve any of those problems because there's no low sodium food in restaurants, and there's no low potassium. I had such strange dietary restrictions that I just went out and then suffered the consequences of being out, and then I'd come home and try to basically dry out. I mean, I was always, to get a little bit specific, I was always having fluid buildup, edema in my body because of the sodium in food. And
that's what you saw in that, with him playing the piano.
I had to make.
He gets such headaches he could barely even open his eyes, but still play piano, mind you.
There are so many athletes who are in the same situation differently because when they stop being able to perform, that's the end of their careers. You as a musician maybe can extend that because it's maybe not so, bodies running into bodies, but it still is the impact on that, Did that change? You said something earlier, I can't believe I don't slouch having playing the drums for a billion years. Do you do something to manage the compromises or the positions or the mechanics? Are you aware of that differently?
I just try to keep aware of it every once in a while, but yeah, I don't do anything really to manage that. I should, I guess.
Climbing ropes. You wanted to climb ropes.
Yeah, maybe we'll get that on video. See if I can do it.
I want to see that for sure.
Oh, I'm sure you can do it. This little drummer hands, like little monkey hands up there.
Yeah.
Well, look, Nightingale Floor is the cuts I've heard. Cuts, trying to be really hip, right?
Yeah,
the
tracks.
That have dropped.
That's right. It really feels like a quantum change in your music. The maturity, can you speak to, does this album, for me, when I heard the pieces that have been released, it feels very, very different than the other music. It's the same, but I'm like, holy crap, these guys are going to go ballistic with this album. Different concept, different ideas, or just it's a manifestation of who you guys are now as musicians?
I can say real quick, and I'll turn it over to you, Zach, that we had time off, which a lot of bands don't take or get. We had a bunch of time off. And then when we got back together, it was like, all right, we really want to do this, and it was exciting again. Zach had a bunch of time to write, and we had time to just be who we are, be home, and not be on the road all the time, and not be working. Touring and stuff like that. So it made it really exciting to get back into the studio and work on music again and be it was really refreshing, almost like the first time when we first hooked up and we were going out to start recording, and it was really fun again to hear these songs come out and to get a chance to make them, and we didn't even know if the music would have a home. I just always assumed it would. So that wasn't even part of the plan yet. The plan was just getting back together and playing, which we hadn't been playing together for a long time, at least a year and a half or more, maybe more, and it was just fun again, not like just business.
Pavel talks about, as a coach, he talks about the reminiscence effect. Is that one of the things that happens when you've taken some time off from an activity or a movement or performance or a sport platform is that you integrate a lot. And then when you come back to it, you've actually done some deep learning about your own, and it's different. You're a different person. I mean, to the next level.
Yeah.
I think that's true. The whole reason why we took a break to begin with is I think there was just a certain burnout level that had happened on the last album cycle, and I think there's a lot of reasons probably why that was happening, but I think taking that break allowed me, anyway, I can't speak for you, but allowed me to think about, well, what were the specific reasons why I was feeling burnt? What was doing it to me? What was it about the way we were playing, the way we were setting up when we were playing live, or the kinds of songs we were choosing to play in our set, or why we were structuring things the way we were, or We've had kind of rotating cast of players in the band, the live band. It's not just the two of us. And what was it about those combinations of things, and what could we do different that would just make it seem a little scary? So that's always good for live. I think we got in touch with that. And when we were working on this record, I know this is an exercise, but when we were working on this record, it was we tried to play more live when we were actually tracking it. 'Cause we don't have to go into the minutia of how records are, made, but we tracked a lot of the stuff live, bass, drums, guitar, and so when you hear this album, it's pretty stark contrast with the last one, where it feels live, and I'm hoping that when people hear it, they'll want to hear it live because they'll feel that energy. This record to me has a lot of that energy to it. Kind of an excited energy, a little bit of a desperate energy, kind of emotional desperation, not, I think a good kind of desperation where there's a certain hunger, I think, in the songs. And a lot of those feelings, I kind of lost sight of that before. And so now getting that time off when we reconnected and we started playing again, I was reminded of that. I was reminded of, why am I connected to this person? Why do we have a good relationship in the studio? Why have we been friends for such a long time? It's good to get a little space to be like, oh yeah, this is, and you talked before about when did you know this is something you wanted to do, playing music. And for me, it's a little different. Only until I really started playing with Pat and did I really realize that it's something I didn't study music. He studied music in school, and I came to it differently. I don't consider myself really a musician. I consider myself more of a songwriter, but only until we connected did I even realize that I've actually been writing my whole life. I didn't even know that. I thought they were just like daydreams when I was a kid. I didn't realize that they were songs. I didn't have that self-awareness. I just thought that's just how I think. And so reconnecting with Pat and starting over again, I'm realizing that I'm on that path that I'd always been on, is that this is what we do, and this is why we exist.
I love this quote, Zach. You're speaking about your relationship and detour you were commenting on. You said, I've said they're gonna have to kill us off in order to make us break the band up, because that's the only way we'll stop. Mm-hmm. They keep trying, but nothing quite gets us. Yeah. And I mean, you guys are kind of an anomaly to my mind in the music world. You've been together so long, and you're obviously speaking very affectionately about one another in your working process. How have you done that? I mean, perhaps it's these breaks, or perhaps it's just you guys are on the same page with things.
Well, actually, we were having a discussion right before we sat down, and we're talking about those breaking points, and the only way to survive in this business at all is through being there for each other and supporting each other emotionally and through other things. Takes him more time to break his drums down than for me to put my stuff away and helping out. But it's also
I was worried about that for a second.
But talking about a moment, there was a time about 4 years ago where we had this recording session booked. We were doing this compilation, and we had studio time booked in San Francisco at the studio called Tiny Telephone. And
4 hours. Every band got 4 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and I injured myself the day before. I realized I had a couple of slip discs in my neck. I didn't know it at the time, but I ended up being bedridden for like months. It was this awful period, but I was really messed up, but I felt like we had committed to recording, and I don't know what I was thinking. I'm like, okay, we just have to do it. I couldn't even like move my body. I was in agony. And I remember we went to the studio, and I had to lay down on the floor. I couldn't even stand or sit or anything. And the guys who put the compilation together, they just kept bringing ice packs and like lining them up on the floor, and I had to lay down on them. And I couldn't play guitar because I couldn't move my arms. All I could do was sing, so they had to hold the microphone over my head, and I could play the keyboard, but they had to hold it for me. But in terms of our relationship, is that I was like, Pat's like, I don't remember who decided, but he just played the guitar. He just did all the other things, and it actually ended up having a great feel because he basically played everything. And I think that exemplifies our relationship, that I was wounded he just handled everything, and we made it work. And we just figured out how to do it. And maybe I'm an idiot for actually agreeing to. I should have just rescheduled, but we did it. But actually, the recording sound, I think, came out really well.
Great.
I'll send a copy. But I think that's it. Is that you have to make it work somehow. And when someone's weak, you just have to be strong for them. And then it just comes around and goes around. And the mental warfare of just staying on the road and not thinking about the realities of what the music business is or any of those things. You just, if it's working, you make it. You continue to make it work. You know?
Well, with the purity of playing in the gym, you guys play us a couple songs?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rogue Wave.
All right.
time stamps you submit to the day, and you say she that makes you heavy, she don't want to be a close with mine, yeah. I'm used to it, I'm used to it, whoa, yeah, I'm used to it, I'm used to it, whoa, yeah, I'm used to it, I'm used to it. What is love? What is love without pain? Without pain. All your own life fictions love. The hands of nothing. She will get you without falling. So
So we have a new song called College. These are all new songs, but this is a single from our new record. Play it right now.
where we come from, keep it to ourselves. We'll always start our rise and invite it around. Because it always was, and it always is. We're shattering cold ground. Without a sound, you cannot acknowledge all the digital knowledge. You cannot acknowledge all the digital knowledge. You know about it each other. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All without it each other. With it, with it, with it, with it. You know you can go on kicking yourself. They tell you you're lost song and you can never be one. In the darkest slurs only in our eyes, but it is away as if the sun was from the sky. Not knowledge, all that you know knowledge. Not knowledge, all that you know knowledge. Not about each other. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know about each other. With it, with it, with it, with it. Oh, can't get myself down.